So welcome everybody to Dharma night, and lovely to see you here. We're going to have a break from classes as from next week for 2 weeks. So this is the last of the current series that we've been engaged in on Dharma night. Just stepping back a bit, when I first got involved in Buddhism, many decades ago, one of the things that really fascinated me was that Buddhism celebrated these in-between states that you get in life, when something's just finished and something's about to happen. And there's an in-between state, and in Buddhism we call it the bardo. It's this Buddhist word about the bardo state. So it can mean that little bit where you've finished work and you're going home, you're in a bardo. Or it can be when you finish this life and you're about to move on to the next one. So a bardo can be kind of big or it can be really small. So we're in a bit of a bardo at the moment in that we finished this whole series on ethics, the 5 precepts. So we really went into that in a lot of detail, I thought, and some great talks and great discussion around that. And we've got a new series that's starting in a few weeks' time, and even I don't know what that's going to be yet. We haven't actually decided. We're going to have a meeting next week. So we're definitely in a bardo state. And one of the great things about bardo states is all sorts of fascinating things can go on in that, and which is of great value to us. But normally in life, we don't notice them. We're just thinking about the next thing that's going to happen. We don't think about being mindful in the bardo state. So that's what we're doing. We're in the bardo state. And there's some really great stuff going on in that. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple of interviews. So there are these people like me, others here, who teach regularly at these classes, and we're not cardboard cutouts. We're real people with real lives in the Dharma. And so you might just wonder, we've got these strange names, and you might wonder, well, who are you really? What's your life really like? So tonight we're going to find out. I'm going to interview Yoshidaka, and also Amarachandra is going to be interviewed by Arthur Siddhi. So we've got half an hour each, and in between the two, there'll be a little bardo. So watch out for that. Watch out for that little bit of bardo. And we're not actually, one interview's finished, and the next one's just about to start. Okay. So this is where I do my sort of TV interview with it. And look, I've even brought a clipboard. Look. I know what I'm going to ask him, but I just brought a clipboard because it kind of looks good. Answer. I've even brought a clipboard. Yeah, okay. Recycled cardboard. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I wanted to introduce you to Yoshidaka. Just keep an eye on time. Yeah, because here he is, a man with glasses on. You might not just know much about him, really. But he's got this fabulous name. Yashodaka means sky dancer whose sphere is beauty, splendor, and worth. I'll repeat that actually. Sky dancer whose sphere is beauty, splendor, and worth. I mean, what a name, eh? What a name he's been given.
Yoshidaka will do.
Yoshidaka will do. Okay. And he used to be a graduate in Cambridge where he studied engineering. This is a very long time ago because he's now 60. He's 60 years of age. And for 19 years, he was an aeronautical engineer. But he also he left all that and he worked in right livelihood, in a Buddhist business with quite a number of us for 12 years where he took on all sorts of practical management roles. And in the past, he's been a great sportsman, particularly in the area of badminton and tennis. What you also might not know about him, he's a very, very accomplished jazz pianist. He's very, very good. But also he plays the violin. And he's played in orchestras, played classical music. So he's a very kind of accomplished person. We might even call a high achiever, inverted commas. So of course, you wouldn't see it like that, would you? These days, he's retired after a period of working in care work towards his retirement. He retired from care work and he now teaches. He's here at Dharma, and he does lunchtime classes here at the centre. He's been teaching in Letchworth for I think 10 years now, something like that. He leads Dharma study for men's groups, and he's sometimes involved in Buddhist festivals. So you'll see him, if you hang around the centre at all, you'll get to know Yashodaka, the sky dancer. All right. Oh yes, and he was ordained in Spain 15 years ago. So I've got a number of questions for him. So I'm going to try and draw him out a bit. So let's see what emerges from Yoshidaka. So Yoshidaka, how did you first get involved in Buddhism?
Yeah, so this is going back to very early 2000s. So when I was about 36 or 37, both my parents passed away in the space of a year. So that was something of a shock to the system. And that sort of, what that seemed to do was I sort of connected to the human race a bit more after that, sort of having some substantial difficulty over a period of a year, sort of just opened me up a bit more. I became but a somewhat more empathic person. So there was a bit of a change which was in sort of in the offing at that point. And then I had a brief romance that didn't last very long, about a year later. And then I was sort of carved open in a way. I was sort of open to something more. I needed more out of my life. I sort of had a bit of a midlife crisis where it sort of like see my life sort of going around in the same repetitive way and year after year, and it was no better the first time round than the first time round. So there's definitely a sense that something new needed to emerge. And around that time, which was probably 1999-ish, something like that, or 2000, and what actually happened? Yes, I started. At that point, I started exploring a bit in spirituality. So I started off reading books, and it was a bit interesting. But the sort of defining time was in a way was totally random. I was in Mexico having a holiday with some number of people arranged to go skiing with, but they were these lads were like ready to go on fancy holidays to Thailand and places like this, India, which I went to with them. And this holiday was based in Mexico. We were seeing some Mayan remains, things like that. So we'd had quite a long journey to Mexico, and we're staying in this hotel room before dinner, an hour to kill before lunch, or not before dinner on the first night. I'm just lying on the bed, and there was a bedside table, and there was a book on the bedside table. It was the sayings of Buddha, Buddhism. See what that's got to say. So I just opened this book, it happened to be there. Unfortunately, it was in English rather than Spanish, otherwise I got nowhere. So I started reading, I opened up the first page I could see, and it was the Four Noble Truths, so I got the first noble truth about the various suffering in life, which was avoid internally. Yes, I've experienced some relatively recently. Yeah. And then it said the second noble truth, that the cause of the suffering is craving. I just recently stood up from this girlfriend, some craving going on there. And then you got the third noble truth, which said there is a cessation of suffering. I didn't quite get on with that. And then there was the noble eightfold path, which is the first noble truth. No idea what that was about. Having said that, those two little nuggets of the first two noble truths definitely struck a chord. But the thing which sealed the deal was I carried on reading this book. And again, very, very, very fortunate. I came across the story from the early scriptures about the story about a lady called Kisagotami. So it's a story well beloved by many, many Buddhists. And anyway, the story goes that Kisagotami, which was a very, very plain woman, but she got married, she got a husband, and her stock in life sort of started to be raised, and then she gave birth to a child. So again, so this is all very, very good for her situation in the community where she lives. But the baby got sick and died very, very ill, and she just couldn't tolerate this. She could not come to terms with this. She was sort of a little bit mad anyway. So she wandered around trying to get people to bring her. She said, like, my son's very sick. Can you make him well again? And eventually, somebody must have said, "Well, why don't you go see the Buddha? He's a very wise man." So she went to see the Buddha, and said, my son's very, very sick. What can I do to make him well again? And he said, "Well," Buddha said, "Well, what you need is a mustard seed. So go and get a mustard seed, but you must get it from the house where nobody has passed away." So you can imagine her going to the first house, and find all Indian households probably have mustard seeds. So I'd like a mustard seed here. Just have to have my son get well again. So, yeah, I've got a mustard seed, yeah, but has anybody passed away here? My father-in-law passed away last month. So we should go on to the next house. And you can imagine the story. She goes around all the houses, and eventually she realizes that everybody passes away, and this happens to her son as well. So she's able to let go of her son and went to the Buddha, and then sort of became a disciple of the Buddha. But this story really struck me very, very strongly. And yeah, so I think that the sense was that I'd come across wisdom for the first time in my life, and that sort of struck me really, really, really strongly. So from that point, I was sort of really open to exploring more about Buddhism. So went and bought some more books, and a few of them written by the Dalai Lama and some other people. And yeah, so I was reading these books, and yes, and enjoying them. And then I thought, well, Buddhists are supposed to meditate, aren't they? So if the Buddhists meditate, I'm going to need to meditate. So I had no idea what to do. But the second time I sat down, I was armed with a bit of a practice from a book by Sogyal Rinpoche called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And it's a kind of bit of a metabhavana, rejoicing in anybody really, the practice that was put forward. Well, I've read it for some Dalai Lama, and I was quite impressed with him. He seemed like a great bloke. So I just basically did a kind of a metabhavana for the Dalai Lama, and it had a really, really strong effect. I had about kind of an hour and a half meditation experience, at the end of which I was basically a changed person. I was become optimistic and flippantly pessimistic before that. My life hadn't really gone well. So something was seen about a way forward that I found something which I was convinced was going to be of great significance for my life, which what it turned out to be.
So just going back a bit to, all these accomplishments that you've got your career, you've been to Cambridge, you were an accomplished musician, you were an accomplished sportsman. Was that not enough for you in your life?
No, I've been doing the same thing over and over again. And something new needed to happen. I was just very much stuck in the rut. And yes, having had this initial opening, which was very clearly talked about. What I spoke to Frank Negotia about 20 years ago. And he said, "Well, that's big in his mind, that is." So there's that, and I thought, well, yeah, that sounds really right, but I had no idea what to expect. Yeah, I just entered into just did a bit of meditation with a really open, receptive mind.
So you were receptive, you were open at that particular time. So that's really where your spiritual life first started then.
Yes, but it's quite. I just wanted to say that how I hadn't actually contacted the movement at this stage, and I sort of knew that Buddhism was something which I needed to engage with. And I was friend was driving somewhere, his name was Neil, lived in Stockport, and I said, oh, I got to become really interested in Buddhism, and he said, oh, I know where you need to go. He was like an arch reader, he read everything, he knew everything about everything, and he was kind of sympathetic to Buddhism, and he'd been to the Manchester Buddhist Centre just to get books, and he was making Buddhist friends involved as a Buddhist, and he said, yeah, that's where you need to get to. And then we carried on talking, and he dropped to really, in a way, quite a frivolous comment. He said, maybe you'll be the next Buddha. I didn't take him seriously, but I was shaken to the core of my being. There's something, I don't know, the good God knows what was going on, but something deeply shook me, just even by this frivolous comment by my friend. Anyway, so I made my way to the Manchester Buddhist Centre and enrolled on some beginners courses in Buddhism meditation, and they very rapidly became the highlights of my week. I lived about an hour away in St Anne's, about 50 miles away from Manchester.
So can you remember your first night at the Manchester Buddhist Centre?
I do.
Your experience, how did you find it?
Absolutely, it was a very, very positive experience.
Yeah.
The first time I went there, it was an introduction to Buddhism and meditation night, yeah. And there's about 50 people there. And there was two older members who really struck me as they definitely had something. Their names were Lally Tavira and Priyavadata, one who was in the North now in Ireland. But they really struck me very strongly. They had something, and I wanted whatever that was. And this was all a little bit unconscious at the time. It's probably something like going for refuge. Yeah. Thinking back on it with a bit of hindsight, it's probably what they had, which I wanted. But also they were good listeners. They actually listened to what you had to say. It was a bit disarming. So actually, they really listened to you and looked at you while you were talking to them. Yeah. Which wasn't the way all my friends did. Some of them did at times. So it was definitely refreshing to have really open response from the members, and they created a very, very positive impression.
So eventually, obviously, you got involved and you became a literat. So eventually, what you gave up aeronautical engineering?
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened there? Why did you do that?
So I think from my very earliest days of working in defence, which was, looking back on it, a lot to do with following the footsteps of my dad. He was a fighter. Well, he was a pilot in the war, though he eventually went active service. He was more of a teacher, a flying teacher. He was also quite a good flyer. And then he went into naval research. So there was a bit of me just following like a good boy in my dad's footsteps. But even after I got this job after leaving university, and even from day one, there were misgivings about doing the job. But I basically put those aside. It was just a bit uncomfortable that I had to think of something else to do. And it was pretty much like that for about 19 years. But there was definitely some conflict in me about being involved in defence, and you can argue it's got some political zesty, but other things which are less desirable about it. And so there's always a bit of disquiet in me about doing this job. But when I sort of started meditating, it was very clear that it was going to have to go as a matter of some urgency. And after about a year of practicing the Dharma, going to the Manchester Buddhist Centre to do meditation at home, it became a matter of considerable urgency. I could no longer do that work. It meant absolutely zero or less than zero to me. So I had to get out. And fortunately, at that time, they were happy to take people into the Winters and Evolution warehouse to do basic work. Winters and Evolution was.
So what did you get from that in terms of your inner life working in for this business? What did that do for you?
Yeah, so I think something which was very important. Basically, I lived and worked with other Buddhists. Couldn't get away from the writings, there was a lot of exemplification of qualities going on. People spoke very, very kindly to each other. There was virtually, I didn't say, I don't remember any backbiting, but in my previous job, that was all the time.
Yeah.
There was always the bosses being moaned about, other people being moaned about. You just didn't get that. There was a great deal of kindness, and people had a strong spiritual aspiration. So, and I had some aspiration myself. So there was a strong sense of genuine bonding with people. So that was really important, a sense of bonding. Having my own kind of values being reflected in other people was probably gave me a bit of confidence, actually. Because it wasn't just me going it alone, it was doing that in the company of other people.
And were you still playing sort of jazz piano and things like that at the same time when you were there?
Actually, I didn't do so much playing. Yes, I didn't actually do a whole load of playing. The first few years, I came to Windhorse and didn't do a whole load of playing because I've been playing in orchestras for 20 years prior to that, or amateur orchestras. But I basically ditched that. And what I sort of realised more recently was what was going on there was that the orchestras I played in at least had a bit of a flavour of the spiritual community, at least while they were making music together. But when I sort of found that the spiritual community more proper, you could say, maybe a more neat form, that could quite happily be dropped and naturally sort of dropped away. But importantly in music, soon after I came to Windhorse, I started writing music. I started writing poetry as well. So something was really, the cat was definitely let out of the bag in terms of creativity. There's something about the creativity, particularly of meditation, which was a bit of an eye-opener really. Starting to find out something of what the mind was capable of, seemed to open my creative juices. And yes, probably for the early part when I went to Australia, didn't do so much music playing, but did quite a bit of composition, and that's continued.
So here you are, you're kind of very involved in the middle of the spiritual community. You've left your old life in aeronautics behind. You've definitely become a Buddhist. You're deeply involved in meditation every day, all this kind of thing. You're really living your life. There must have been a few challenges in there as well for you. What were they? What kind of challenges were you encountering?
So I think the main challenges I faced were as a bit of what can we call the growing pains of success. So what I've been quite fortunate in terms of meditation. I've had quite a fortunate life in that I had quite a lot of inspiring experiences, and which has given me a lot of fuel for enthusiasm and commitment. So it's been very, very good from that point of view. But the downside of this is that you can get a bit inflated. Can
conceit or something like that.
Can definitely conceit, seeing myself as a little bit special. My current take on things is that if you go a little bit deeper in meditation, maybe a bit of deeper seeing, the ego gets rather threatened by this. It doesn't like it, so it tries to get in on the act. And the way it doesn't seem to do that can sort of really tries to big you up. And in my mind, I've been enlightened a number of times in my life. Sometimes for quite extended periods before sense kicked in. I was able to let go of this rather ridiculous delusion.
So how did you work with this kind of inflation, this conceit? Well, how did you counteract that?
So it happened. Because I didn't see it at the time.
No.
That's the nature of inflation. But what interestingly, what did happen is that about a year after I got ordained, I had this strong urge to get involved in psychotherapy. And I started training to be a psychotherapist here at Cambridge. And so I did that for a few years. And if you enter the therapy world, and if you've been looking at Melissa here, who's involved in the therapy world, if you get involved in therapy, all you see pretty much all the time is your own failings, your own stuff. You don't see any of the good stuff at all. And if you see your own patterns and your difficulties, time and time again, eventually conceit starts to reduce. Because you realise you're actually not that great after all. You see more clearly there's some stuff, untransformed stuff, still waiting to be.
Well, so you had an experience with a friend, didn't you? Dinah.
Yes.
Was that part of all this as well?
I think that's probably looking at another challenge.
Right. Okay.
That's probably to do with another challenge, which, as well as challenge of conceit. Unless we're a really well-adjusted, rather beautiful human being, we probably start off the spiritual path thinking it's all about number one. And I think we can continue. Well, certainly for my case, anything to go by that lasts for quite a long time. It's all a little bit self-centered. It's probably not without its benefits, and we're probably making a bit of progress. But if it continues to be all about me, that really puts a limit on where the spiritual path can take us. And going back about 10 years, in a very very random way, I was community hopping for a little while, and this lady Diana, she was true Buddhist, but also very ill with multiple sclerosis and other complaints, and she has her social life is entirely on the phone. So she was ringing up people in the community, so I just happened to rather randomly answer the phone. So I started talking to her. And then a little while later, I thought, no, I can actually make a commitment to her and give her a couple of hours on the phone each week. Quite challenging, dealing with somebody who's very ill. Sort of willing to do that. So looking back at it, it's a little bit of at least one step towards being a little bit more other regarding. So it was started to see it's not quite all about me. It's all life is about other people.
So that was 10 years ago, was it?
It was about 10 years ago.
You still doing that?
Yeah.
Oh wow, fantastic. So 2 hours a week, 10 years. Gosh. Great. Well, final question. What about the future? How do you think things might turn out for you? You're retired. You're here at the Cambridge Buddhist Centre. You're teaching. You're well known and well loved, part of the furniture here. So, how do you see the future? How do you think that might pan out?
Get the furniture polish out, maybe. So yeah, I'm definitely going to continue doing what I'm doing for the time being. Very much enjoying and getting stuff out, getting things out, and presenting stuff here at the centre. But if I'm thinking, well, where might that go in the future? Because it seems like the Cambridge Buddhist Centre is very much at the centre stage in my life now, having left work. So maybe some ways in which one can get a little bit more involved. So one thing I'd like to do, I do have a passion for meditation and leading people through meditation. So maybe do a little bit more in terms of encouraging people to develop their practice. Maybe it's one can get involved in, not quite a regular thing, but maybe a one-off events to help people deepen their practice. In the future, this is probably looking quite some way into the future. Maybe a way I might want to incorporate nature into Dharma practice. Just recently, I've got more walk out to the natural world. So we don't quite know where that will go,
Yeah.
but it may be something there. This is, I can't see in the crystal ball or something in the future. Also, maybe at some time in the future, I might want, if the opportunity arose, to get on the council.
Yeah.
So the centre is very much central to my life. But
Really good, thank you. What a fascinating life, eh? My goodness, you just wouldn't know, would you? You wouldn't know all that. So really good. So thank you very much, Yoshidaka. That's fantastic. Great to hear all that stuff about your life and how you moved from where you once were to where you are now, and where you might be going in the future. So yeah, the sky dancer whose spirit is beauty, splendor, and worth. So.
Well, this is a real pleasure, actually. I'm really delighted, Amarachandra, to be, I got your name while earlier today. We've known each other for a long time, sort of 20 years plus, actually, haven't we? But sort of from a distance. But it's just so good doing these. As Sadaraj was saying, we do this with the whole team, the whole teaching team here at Dharma Night. And that's because we're not teachers in the kind of 3-year Buddhist degree sort of way. There is a very thorough training, but you can't really teach Buddhism in that sort of way. We're not teaching that sort of way. Actually, we're practicing Buddhism, and you can share it to the extent that you live it. That's really what's going on here, and that's why we want to instead just share our lives, if you see what I mean, share our own successes and failings, so that you can sort of learn something from them. Buddhism doesn't exist in a book, it exists in someone's life. So yeah, just I'm really, whilst I know you and something of your history, I'm just really looking forward to sort of discovering a bit more about your personal sort of unfolding, I suppose, is that in Buddhism, in the Dharma. So yeah, just to go back to the start with Buddhism, what was your first contact with Buddhism?
So I was Australian, and when I was about 25, I put my backpack on, and this is what you do, and headed off to Southeast Asia, and I had a ticket to London, one-way ticket to London. So my first contact was in Thailand, and it gosh, how do things arise? Because I don't know how I bought my first book on Buddhism, but I know I had it quite quickly once I got to Thailand. And I did a 2-week, 10-day Vipassana retreat there as well.
So was there some sort of latent interest there in Buddhism?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Right.
I had no interest in Buddhism whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, so I don't know how my hand reached out to buy the book, but it did. And I was, I guess I was just there, and I was going to check it out. And then I went to India, particularly North India, and went to Ladakh, but went up to some of the areas. Yeah, I know that was some of the areas around there, and had more interaction with Tibetan Buddhists. So then I saw Tibetan Buddhists being practicing. I could sort of see, it's well, actually, first I was going into Tibetan temples after being in Thailand. I walked into Tibetan temples, and I'm looking, I go, where's the there's the 1,000 Dharma. There was Padmasambhava, all these wonderful figures. And I was like, just like, where's the Buddha? I can't find the Buddha here. Just like, this is so different. And then the next part of my journey took me to Kathmandu, and someone had already told me on the retreat that there were these people who were friends of Western Buddhism, were something like that, no idea. They were teaching in Kathmandu. So then I went to Kathmandu, and some Triratna order members were teaching there. And actually I was like, oh, they're doing it. I can do it. So it had felt a bit one step removed from me. And I saw these guys and they were doing it. And so I get up really early and sort of go and meditate with them in the morning. And then I did a little 3-day course on the Wheel of Life, which is pretty kind of trippy, isn't it? When you sort of your first course, you know, all these different realms. But I sort of was just willing to sort of take it all in. We did a retreat. And then I was told that in Bethnal Green, which sounded very lovely, there was a Western Buddhism, Friends of Western Buddhism centre. So I went to Bethnal Green, but I did not find any green.
So Friends of the Western Buddhist was the old name.
So I had no idea, you know, it's just coming along. And then I moved to Oxford actually, and there was a group in Oxford that was a Triratna group. And
so just going back a little bit. So what did you encounter? You went on that first retreat, and then you went and encountered Tibetan Buddhism. So something spoke to you.
Well, that first retreat was torture.
Okay, so, and you like that?
Yeah, exactly. I did not like it. I remember that early morning bell. It's like, no, you know, it's very early morning bell. I wasn't really, and I'm not a natural meditator, so that was. I was there and I was willing to give it a go. So it's like,
what kept you?
hard work.
What spoke to you?
I remember we had this very esteemed monk who would give us teachings, and he would teach the Abhidharma. I didn't know it then, and you know that all phenomena is made up of these constituent parts, these dharmas, and I had no idea what he was talking about, but I kind of resonated with it. And we used to walk to see the old sort of master in single file, in silence. I also really liked that. So there was something, maybe atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the teachings. But in that form of Buddhism, as a woman, I didn't feel sort of so connected. And then with Tibetan Buddhism, I really felt the compassion element of Buddhism really, really coming forth. I really felt the sort of, there was a kind of vitality and a liveliness and a fellow feeling for the world with that. And I was really interested in these absolutely beautiful artworks that I'd seen in these beautiful, beautiful temples. But again, it just felt one step removed from me. So then when I turned up to these Westerners teaching meditation, it was just like, oh yeah, they're doing it. And I really liked the two guys because they were really, really different. One of them was from West London, he was trying to be a bit cool, and the other guy's from North Scotland, and he would blush every time he would speak, but they really worked well together, and I really appreciated how they connected and worked together, and I just had this sense, oh, I could be myself, they're themselves, I can be myself.
Really interesting.
Yeah, and I think when I've been thinking about this, one thing that's sort of is I've always found that there's a practice, something to put into practice with Buddhism. That's what I've done. Is I've sort of listened and I've sort of connected with something. I thought, oh, I can put that into practice and see if it has an effect. And you know, usually has an effect. So, and I think when I was thinking about it, you might get onto the future, but I think that still draws me on. Actually, there's still lots of things that I need to put into practice, and I'm still doing that, thinking, oh, okay, I can put that into practice and see what happens. Yeah. So it's a
thread that was there right from the beginning. It's sort of
Yeah. But I had a Catholic upbringing, not in a Catholic country. So I think, you know, I wasn't surrounded by a repressive culture that, you know, that had that I would react to. But So I enjoyed ritual, and I enjoyed the Christian stories and things like that. So I think that was there, and I sort of discarded Catholicism. But yeah, I suppose I had a candle that wasn't lit, and I didn't want to live life without a lit candle. You know, sort of something was kind of missing. Yeah.
And then, as you say, you were disappointed with no green in the Bethnal Green Centre.
No green. There was also no garden at Covent Garden.
But in Oxford, you found a tree ratner centre.
Yeah, yeah.
Or tree ratner group.
Tree ratner group.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So when I came to, when I arrived in Britain after I'd done my travelling, two of my sisters, I have a lot of sisters, and I am blessed with a lot of sisters. So two of my sisters were here, and I thought, oh God, come all this way. I don't think I really want to be in London with my two sisters. Love them, though I do. And I had a friend in Oxford, so I moved to Oxford. But I thought to myself, oh, what do I want? I thought, oh, I want to move to some centre, some place that has one of these tree ratner Buddhist centres.
Oh, so you're quite
So
interested.
yeah, so I was quite interested. I thought, yeah, I wanted my candle.
Right,
I wanted a light
Yeah.
at the centre of my being.
Yeah.
I wanted to move out of London. I thought that, and actually at that stage I wanted to work with refugees or work in refugee studies in some way. So I moved to Oxford, and all those three things sort of happened.
Right.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Just another thread to throw in. I mean, talk of all these sisters, and I know, I've met some of them, and there's a lot of fun that goes on between these sisters. That's a kind of a thread for me in your life, kind of very much fun-loving. So how did that sit with this rather serious kind of Buddhist interest?
Was it serious?
Did nobody tell you?
I think I have to be serious.
Yeah. So it never seemed sort of. There was never a sort of.
Yeah, there is. Well, I think it was all very positive, actually. So I came from really dusty New South Wales, sort of right in the country, town of 4,000 people. There's not much there, and grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and you know, I don't know if you've been to Australia, blue singlets, boots, farming, fights. You know, it's you know, it's people had to make their way into this land and settle. Europeans had to make their way onto this land and settle, and there's violence in that, in the very nature of that, and so it's hard. It's hard. It's kind of, there's a hardness to it, and there's a cultural disjuncture. So we've got this sort of Western, we've got sort of like our Western European, we've got our European roots, many of us, and they have no depth. So I think coming to Britain, there was a whole, for me, it was huge in terms of culturally connecting with my, with the sort of this England home business, and with all the fairy tales that I'd read, and the art that I knew about, and the literature that we've been schooled in. There was, I was coming home to that, but I had a lot of edges, a lot of raw edges, and you know, I'd lived, I was young, I'd lived in inner city Sydney, you know, I was, you know, it was, you know, I was grungy, I, you know, I really liked that. I was really sort of, you know, looking to not be polished, but then I encountered quite a lot of polish in lovely middle class, delightful, sort of Bethnal, well, Oxford, Oxford, and then Cambridge. So I think that has had an effect on me, and some of it has perhaps dampened down some of that sort of like, oh, right, how you go, like, you know, sort of like an outgoingness. And then some of it has also been quite good at helping me ground. That was a big process for me, helping me be more grounded, more present in my experience, and probably getting to learning to have conversations. There's a whole heap of stuff. I can't go into it all, you know, sort of like yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe just kind of drawing back to Oxford, and then at some point you asked to become a Mitra. What was that sort of decision-making process like?
Yes. It was really easy. I just wanted, you know, it was really easy. It's like, these people are really good. I really like them. I'm really, really attracted. They are, it was funny because my, when I, you know, moved to the city and I, you know, had my gang in Sydney, and, you know, we had our look and we had things that we did, and we had we were protesting and forming bands and all that sort of stuff. They were kind of my people, but the shine wore off that, and I could see these other people who were really good people. It's like, could they be my people too? But there was something different about it. Yeah,
was looking for a community that you could
definitely looking for a community, but more looking to light this like this candle that had sort of
okay, so it was a life as much as
it was something that was calling from within me. So so asking to be a Mitra was a bit of a process, and I became a Mitra in Sydney. So I moved back to Australia and became a Mitra in Sydney. Yeah, which was fantastic. Yeah.
And then you came back here. What brought you back?
Oh, it's the same story. So I was in Sydney and doing various bits of work. And I was living in a women's community in Sydney, and I loved that women's community. I just have to say, I really loved my women's community. Not only did they bought this, the other people I lived with, they bought an old boarding house which we did up, and it looked right out over the Pacific Ocean, so it was absolutely glorious. And I was much younger than everyone else. So I was 28 when I moved into that community, and She was like 60 something. She was really old. But I really loved all those people. I still really love them. So that was a really positive context. But I wanted more. So I had heard that there was this big business, Buddhist business in various different opportunities to live and work in a Buddhist context in Britain. So I came to Cambridge to join Windhorse Evolution, which was this Buddhist business that we had for about 25 years in Cambridge, and the warehouse, big warehouse is here, and we had a shop as well. And so I came to work in that, and I just never left. And I really loved working. It wasn't always easy, and I look back, perhaps in the glasses are rose tinted in a way, but even though there were the struggles or the miscommunications or all that learning that I had to do to really work in a team, to really listen to people, to really sort of be in communication and sort of work together. Actually, it was just so good. It wasn't always fun, but I really look back at it. It's like, it had sort of guts. It had a bit of muscle. It had context. I really appreciate that.
It's really interesting. So you've given us this image of a candle, and that being sort of missing in your life, and then here we've got sort of gutsy kind of living together, working.
When I said it, actually, it was really just like, it was so like it had something, it had a bit of welly, a bit of muscle.
Right.
You know, like I think one thing that made me stay was I came and I did a puja with everybody who was working. We did a big puja together, about 60 people doing a puja. And in Sydney, it was a small group, and you'd do a puja and you'd be thinking, oh, how long is this going to go on for? Or, oh, it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? But I came and did a puja with 60 people, and I was like, that's what a puja is. Yeah, I'm staying. Sorted. Yeah.
I really like that, you know, that this this image of the candle and that sort of gutsy kind of full on, you know, working together.
Yeah.
It's gritty, it's living together, it's gritty,
Yeah.
it's gritty.
Yeah.
And was that the coming together of these different aspects, this sort of life that somehow had something, the candle's like a sort of image of something kind of sacred or something like that, isn't
that's
it?
right. I don't know that I can put those two so easily together. But that is a great way for me to to practice, actually, an objective situation. And you can have that in any situation. But when we've got collective practice, we're all sort of ostensibly on the sort of same page. We're trying to bring something into being. And you can have that in a really good team or in an orchestra or something like that. But working in a context where we're really trying to practice openness or truthfulness or kindness or ego, you know, stripping back a bit of the ego, vulnerability, getting to know myself in relation to other people. That was, you know, that mirror. Yeah, that mirror was great, because in other contexts, people don't really, it takes a particular permission to really reflect back who you are and what's going on. So you can get that in work, and I could get that in you know, family situations and things like that. And definitely you get that reflecting back, which is really, really helpful. But in these team situations, and working here as well, and being on the Dharma night team, we get these reflections back. That's got a bit more to it. Yeah, because we take it on as a practice in a way.
So a bit more to it. So, a bit more, so have you got an example?
I'm just talking. I did have a thread there. I think because we've got that, we're all trying to light our candles or something. We're trying to practice together. We're trying to tread the Dharma path together. I've got permission in a way to try and be more real, and other people have got a bit more permission to try and meet me there. Because I remember, so I worked at Windhorse Evolution for about 9 years, and then I worked for Cambridge Assessment for a number of years, and I was in this meeting, and my boss landed me in something, and I was going in there as a junior, and we came out of the meeting, and I sort of took her aside. And I said, "Don't ever do that to me again. Don't drop me in like that." But actually, it wasn't appropriate. I was too junior. I was used to a sense of even though you might have people who are a bit more experienced, you can bring yourself. It wasn't a totally bad thing to do, but I could see that wasn't the usual way.
Yeah. So there's something more sort of direct.
It's candle metaphor. You know, we've got our, you know, it's the bodhicitta, isn't it? It's where we've got our individual practice, but we've got our collective practice, and that context is bigger than us, and it has its own life and atmosphere and.
So at some point you asked for ordination. Do you know why?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why? Well, I really wanted to join the order almost immediately, but it took me a long time to ask. I didn't really, it was a bit idealized, the order, those wonderful order members, and I'm just little me, and I couldn't possibly, even dare to step towards being this sort of wonderful being. So it took me quite some time to ask. I mean, everyone knew I wanted to ask to join the order. I knew that I wanted to ask, but I just didn't feel quite that I just didn't, I thought it was, I didn't think I was worthy in a way. Yeah. But then eventually it gets a bit tedious, doesn't it, to wait around. So you just got to sort of throw it in. You got to ask, haven't you? You've got to, if you want to be in the gang, you've got to ask to be in the gang.
Great. And then, so whizzing forward, you've recently become Michigan, haven't you?
Yeah.
So what sort of shift has that been? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities that sort of opened up for you?
So happy to be which it can be. Really happy to be which it can be. I feel like my old self. I feel like I've got myself back. So this is what I should be doing with my life. This is me. I don't. This is my context. I couldn't quite manage to hold practice in the same way when I wasn't working in a completely Buddhist, when I wasn't always in a completely Buddhist context. I really love the world. I really love shiny glittery things. I really like going out. I really love good cinema and art, and I really like food. So I'm really easily distracted. But that's good as well, because I'm not interested in transcending. I'm interested in opening my arms to the world, but that can get a bit distracting. But I didn't feel like I had the depth in my life that I had when I'd been in other contexts. So and I wasn't fulfilling something in me. Something in me wasn't being brought forth. And I felt like when I came to work for the Buddhist Center and I moved back to a bigger community, because I've been in a small community, that there was a wholeness to me that hadn't been there before. I don't know if this is really quite getting to your question, but
it's really good.
this is what I'm here to do, is to be in this context and to express a Dharma, express something of myself, or to express is the wrong word, to let that flowering happen. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And the other was a kind of sidetrack, or trying to sort of put money in my pocket, but it wasn't really, I wasn't fully present, and now I'm fully present. Yeah.
Interesting.
That helps.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm just really happy at the moment to be working at the centre and being the Nidra convener. I just feel like, I know that sort of that high, that bubble floating will, like it will sort of like something like that. And then, but at the moment I just feel my heart is really, really open. I can feel bits of me coming home. I physically sometimes get a sense of integration. Yeah, so I'm more alive. I've got more energy. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And I mean, that says a lot about opportunity, and a wonderful opportunity, isn't it, to do what you're made to do.
Yeah.
Do you want to just sort of flesh that out in terms of in terms of what that means in practice, a few things of what that means in practice. I'm guessing it's to do with people and communication.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just gonna, sort of, there's a wholeheartedness there. I think is where I'm going to start. Something without remainder. You know, there's no parts of me left behind. Sort of gathering, bringing all of myself, and I can be, yeah, I can. There's a sort of a wholeness there. Yeah, and well, it's just fantastic, isn't it? I get to come to classes like this and sit here, which I never thought I would be the person sitting at the front, sort of what's going on. You know, I never, you know, that seemed like a big leap. Even really recently, it felt like it would be a leap. But it's not a leap, because once I came, all of that just fell away, and this is what I'm here to do. So, but it's, you know, this is a great class. I really like coming to this class. I really like talking to everyone. It challenges me to, you know, sort of like if you want to know something, if you know, really deeply know it, teach it. So, you know, here I am, you know, doing my best every week to try and sort of draw something out and connect my practice of the Dharma with, you know, the formal teachings of Buddhism sometimes, and sort of find the congruences and the edges for that, and sort of share that. So that's a great practice. You know, I first few months I'd go home and I'd be like, oh God, I can't be at the front again. I just can't show myself again. It's too much. Don't make me. And then the next week would roll around again. So so there's something there about yeah, there's process in there of well, I'm quite a bit inspired by Jacob Collier, who you've heard me talk. He's this young musician, and he's yeah, he's just gorgeous, and he's himself. I mean, who else are we? But anyhow, we try and put on these sort of sometimes we try and mold ourselves to our situations, but actually he's really himself, and so I find it a bit inspiring. It's like, oh yeah, I could. He's kind of daggy and gorgeous, and I was like, well, I can be daggy. Fine.
Great. And lastly, Amarachandra, what does that mean?
So Amarachandra means deathless moon. So the moon, the full moon, is a symbol of complete and perfect enlightenment. It's also a symbol of bodhicitta, which is the heart that sort of connects, I don't know, with all beings. And the full moon is it's also really, really beautiful. But it's the female Buddha, Tara, white Tara. She is the color of 1,000 autumn moons. And she, when I was ordained, I asked to be given that visualization practice, and I was given that visualization practice. So in a way, the deathless moon is white Tara. So then that's my life goal, to embody white Tara as much as possible. And my name is a reminder to try and do that.
Thank you very, very much.